Well, welcome back to the Wisdom and Art podcast, where we explore the profound life lessons hidden within the stories that we love in movies, music, and books. I am one of the hosts, Marion, and the other host is Carmela here. And each episode, we will journey through the narratives that shape our understanding of the world and ourselves through the arts. From the heartwarming tales that inspire us to chase our dreams to the poignant lyrics that resonate with our struggles, we will uncover the wisdom embedded in the art that we consume. We will discuss iconic films, unforgettable songs, and transformative literature, diving into the themes and messages that leave a lasting impact through the eyes of NLP and hypnosis. So join us as we chat with authors, fellow enthusiasts, and who knows who will show up as special guests through time. We will share our insights and personal stories of how these artistic expressions have influenced our lives. And whether you're a cinephile, a music lover, or a bookworm, there's something here for every person. So let's settle in and discover the lessons that art teaches us about life. So it has been a beat before we have been, since we've been together doing this. Life was lifing for a little bit for both of us, but we're back. We're back here.
Yay.
And so what are we going to be discussing today, Carmela?
Well, wow. Let me just say what a fantastic introduction. And I get excited listening to your introduction about what we're going to talk about every time you go into this fabulous description. So today, what we're going to be highlighting is the fabulous show that is on Apple TV called Shrinking. And when we're looking at this show, the overview is, if for those of you that haven't seen it, first of all, we're highly recommending it because there's a ton of valuable lessons that we're going to interweave into some of the lessons that we like to share and observe throughout the show. Shrinking is a show about the therapy world, the therapeutics world, with different characters. And some of the characters that we're going to be highlighting today are showing, even though they're in a sense of a world that is supposed to be in the healing position, how human they are as they're going through life and weaving in and out of their own personal journeys, and how even a person, that is supposedly or definitely helping others can be going through their own pain. And in order to observe some of the changes that people need to make, they need to level about their pains. And so that can be some of the problem that people have in a nutshell. Sometimes it's even hard to get to that position. In our work, we highlight the work of Virginia Satir, who teaches us how to level. And leveling is kind of just laying out the truth to yourself, recognizing there's certain problems that we're dealing with, and how to show up and change in the world.
Yeah, and the book that, if anybody needs a reference for Virginia Satir, the book that you can reference is The New People Making. And it is fantastic and one of the cornerstone books that we use in our teaching with the Master Hypnotist Society, from our clients to our students and our trainers. It is a phenomenal book. So we're going to be using a little bit of the themes of that book to figure out what's going on with shrinking.
Yes. So I guess I'm going to, kind of mention a couple of the characters. We don't want to give away too much too early, too soon, because we're going to really take this fabulous show apart a little bit for y'all. And it's kind of a journey, because I just heard they added a season 3, and I can't wait to see what they're going to do with that. But I'd like to talk about and start with the lead character. Jimmy is his name. And Jimmy is displaying, he is one of the therapists on the show. And sorry if there's a little spoiler in some of the description here, if you haven't seen the show at all. But Jimmy is going through the situation where he has lost his wife suddenly. And what happens is it begins to trigger and take him into this profound grief cycle. And, those of us that know what grief looks like, it's actually the cycles of change. We talk a lot about how the cycle of grief is actually something that we go through all the time. even if we're having clients that are going to want to stop smoking, they're letting go of something. They're going through the anger, they're going through denial and bargaining and all of these changes that people go through. If they're not willing to go through that cycle, then they kind of repeat, they loop. And so the demonstration with the character in Jimmy is he's trying to distract from his pain. And what it does is it causes a bunch of disharmony, not just for himself, but with his teenage child. I believe she's a teenager. And so they really do a good job at showing even someone that is working in the industry how human they are, and the kind of pain that people can go through if they're choosing to distract and not level, and or go through or be willing to go through this cycle. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Marion.
Yeah, and I think the way that they framed the character of Jimmy is a great representation of holding onto it, the grief or the anger or the blame, that it all plays into the same Satir model that we were talking about with Virginia Satir. Is he was hanging on to all of those pieces of just hurt. And I know a lot of us, through times, whether it's with trauma or parents or family or whatever it is, or friends, that it when we hang on to those things, it makes our life so much more challenging because we're missing the joys of life. We're missing the proper connections, and it can lead to unhealthy relationships with our family, with our romantic relationships, and even with our friends. It may draw in the wrong types of people. And you see that in the first few episodes. I know, a little spoiler alert, is it, his hurt was laid out into a very destructive pattern where a lot of people were really concerned about him. And so you see that played out beautifully. And so as we're working through each character, notice that some of those themes may be very, very relatable to something that you're going through, right? And so that's how we can teach and grow through these things. The media and the arts is teaching people how they can even model what's going on the screen and grow through that too. So that's the other side of that that we're going to be discussing too. So, so the next character that is fantastically done. So go, Carmela.
Well, I can't help but be so impressed with Dr. Paul, who is played by Harrison Ford. A brilliant job at, first of all, he's just awesome anyway as an actor, and he's taking on this role of the head physician or therapist, and who has been dealing with a diagnosis. And so all of a sudden he's faced with, I'm going through this, I'm still, in charge or the lead of this organization, and have to demonstrate the maturity that takes, while he's having his own personal issues with boundaries and freedom, and how to, kind of repair and heal lifelong relationships with, his own intimate family. And so they talk about, indirectly, they show or demonstrate boundaries and how he's utilizing the boundaries even within his colleagues, and navigate in and out of that, and while dealing with even a new relationship romantically. So there's so many layers to this character that is so brilliantly done. And we have situations in our personal life and business life with personal relationships with boundaries and settings, even between us and colleagues. And our Master Hypnotist Society, we really respect this idea of boundaries, and yet being able to be in rapport and grow and learn from each other. So I see that demonstrated in that particular character, and it's just done well. And there's a lot of humor in it too. We haven't mentioned that, but they interlace humor. I see he's got a very dry personality, but it's actually really funny how he displays his character, and it just really brilliantly done.
Yeah, and he did such an amazing job stepping into that role. That character is so needed in that space, because he is such a great mentor and leader for the other people. But when he does have the struggles that he's having, he has to level with himself of what he can and can't do, and where to delegate, and where to step back, and where to inspire others to take in that space, and step into those other roles that maybe he has to step back a little bit. But he also is recognizing that, the old stage adage is the show must go on. He
Yes.
still has to work. He still has to do his purpose and mission, even if he has these things going on. And he's still learning how to love his life in this new phase of, yes, there's challenges. Yes, there's challenges with relationships and friendships, and growing as a elderly adult. He's challenging himself and pushing himself to make new friends and build new relationships, which is scary, after building up so many walls for so long. So this is an amazing character that continues to show that no matter what, the show must go on, and it's okay to be vulnerable and to open up with the people who really can step into that supportive role, to support us and him and all of that, as his world is changing and shifting. So it's very, very cool position that they put Harrison Ford in. Very, very cool character. So as we go into the next character, who do we have?
I think I want to highlight at this point Alice, who is the daughter of Jimmy, the therapist, who has lost his wife, and she has lost her mother. And the thing that stands out to me while watching this is that, the theme that we go over, where it's not the child's responsibility to be the parent. And unfortunately, not only is she grieving the loss of her mother, but now she's left with dad's acting out. I don't even know who he is, and no one to turn to other than, a neighbor. And that's a whole other story. And so that's something that we really, really want to highlight. We don't want to give that kind of burden to our kids. Now, she's not, under 10. However, it's still a lot of responsibility for her to have to try to parent her parent. And you see the frustration that she goes through in that role, and how damaging it is to her initially. And, without giving away too much, the theme of forgiveness comes up dramatically with her, and it's just so beautifully done. You just kind of want to rewatch that episode over and over again, because it's just done so well. And it's something that everybody can take a valuable lesson from. So I think that was a nice add to the show.
Yeah. And I think that one of the most poignant themes of the whole show is forgiveness, whether it's forgiveness of friends, family, of self. There's so much in that, but we're going to touch on that probably another episode, because we're going to do a couple episodes on this show specifically and break it down into its themes over the next couple of episodes. So look forward to that forgiveness arc. I think we're probably going to touch on that next time. But with Alice, it really, really is interesting to see how much, after she gets to that point of leveling in the satir model, that she starts growing. Like, you see exponentially how much she grows as a person after she hits that point, and how mature she starts becoming. And so it's really, really cool, because you can see it externally. And a lot of times it's a lot easier to watch somebody else go through things than us ourselves, right? And so it's a really cool model to see her hit that moment of like, oh, I really need to stop in this old cycle and now level with myself of what I need, and then get to the other side of that. And I can't wait to see how that plays out in the third season, because I think it's going to be pretty interesting. So yeah, so who else is on the list that we're going to highlight today?
I think it's a toss up between two. Sorry, I'm gonna actually look at my note. I was going back and forth with the Grace, the other therapist, and or Liz. I think I'd like to highlight Liz, because her character, from the beginning of the show, I mean, I was looking at this going, who is that lady and why is she, involved so closely? There was absolutely no boundary. And it's just shocking how little boundary this woman has. And it's her deep-seated need to be needed that is highlighted with Liz. Her and not finding, where she shows up in the world. And how many people do we know that are like that? They make everybody else's business their own because they simply don't know what they're going to be doing or showing up in the world. And it's just a fascinating character to me, and yet he was so lovely, Jimmy the neighbor, with her, and it just was a strange kind of relationship that as you watch it unfold, and how she goes into leveling and learning where she's at with what she needed, and the communication between her and her husband. I was scratching my head through the whole thing going, what's up with this relationship? And
Yeah.
I don't know, what you want to add to that, but I was fascinated.
Her ability to be real with who she really is externally is fantastic. And she is like no bars held back on anything. She is just like true to what she's feeling and thinking, to her detriment sometimes.
Yes.
But what's interesting is externally she is that way. She's very much like self-acceptance, like, I'm totally cool, this is who I am, I'm laying it on the plate. But internally she doesn't have that. And so we see that as that plays out in season 2, is internally she doesn't have the self-acceptance of who she is and what she's doing, and why she's doing it. And so that point of somebody else externally coming and going, tap, tap, tap.
Yes.
This is who you are. Don't deny it. And it's really a loving, loving, loving moment for her to open up that space and go, oh, I'm not being attacked. I'm not being looked down on. I'm not letting people down. Oh, this is who I really am. And this is what I really want in my life. This is what I'm good at. And it's okay to want and need that. Very cool, loving moment with her husband and Jimmy, and even, I can't think of his name. Oh, my favorite character. Oh, Brian. I love Brian. Brian's one of my favorite characters.
Yeah.
But that they all came together and they formed a way for her to really have that self-acceptance. That's going to be beautiful as it plays out in season 3. But notice how it is very interesting how externally she was like totally open and free and all of those things, but internally you could see that was holding back, and that was really a barrier for her. And she also has that arc of forgiveness and everything too, which is kind of fun. And I think almost every character, when I was mapping it out, has the arc of needing to have forgiveness, whether of self or others, which is kind of fun. So like I said, next episode we're going to touch that and how that maps out. But yeah, so awesome. As we go into the next one, who would you want to, do you want to go to Gabby next?
Yeah, we can do Gabby. Gabby is the therapist that I hinted at. Gabby's going through a moment where she's going to have a divorce. And so all of a sudden she faces this, freedom that she's looking at. And her struggle is, kind of like she's over the top. And this is something that we spend a lot of time with. She's empathy oriented. And so what does that mean? What are you taking on? Are you, is there a you, or are you an extension of the people that you're working with? And so that becomes, kind of highlighted in this, where she needs to find her own self. And what does that look like? And all of a sudden, as she's trying to go through this and learns that she has her own personal needs and things, all of a sudden there's another way of sabotaging herself, like deflecting when somebody's giving her unconditional love, because she's used to giving but not receiving. And so that's demonstrated in that character brilliantly as well. And again, going through the arc of, like what you said, the change and the forgiveness, and navigating all of that.
Yeah, and also her character touches on when you're trying to get your life in order, something else happens. Like she ends up having to, I know this is a little bit of a spoiler, she ends up having to figure out how to take care of her aging mother. And does she take on the responsibility of having her in her home or not in her home, or how does it work? And the stress that goes through. And I know a lot of people, including myself, have to go through that or have gone through that. And it is very interesting that all of these themes that seems like that everybody's kind of going through, whether it's right now or even recently, that these are all played out wonderfully well by these amazing actors. And, they continue to add more and more and more amazing actors to the list coming into season 3. From Jeff Daniels to Michael J. Fox. Just excited to see where this goes.
Super excited. Yes.
Yeah.
Getting better and better.
Yes. And so next episode, I know we're just kind of glancing over a few of the characters today. Next episode, we're going to be going over, like I said, how the arc of forgiveness affected each character, and like where they started and how they got there to forgiveness, and what it looked like on the backside of that. And maybe back touch a little bit on, how it was harming them to not have that forgiveness, whether it's forgiveness of self, maybe something they have done, and maybe how they need to forgive others. Absolutely. And we'll probably touch the other character, Lewis, and
we have Brian to talk about, and Grace and Sean. So we'll keep them waiting for the next.
Yeah, and Dr. Julie is fantastic. And even Paul's wife, Susan, there was a very great moment in season 2, episode 5, where they really had that forgiveness moment together. So it's such a beautiful, beautiful show. And I hope that over the next couple of episodes that we do, as I think we're probably looking at 3 episodes total, maybe 4 if we can squeeze another one in, and how you as the watcher can learn from it, and the different aspects of what we train with the Master Hypnotist Society coincides with the healing, and how we teach to get past the challenges that people are seeing played out on the show. So, as we talked about this week, a little bit of the satir model, right? And we can, that's the blaming and placating, distracting, computing, and then leveling. And our wonderful colleague, Heather, does an amazing job of teaching the satir model. But it leaves us stuck and trapped. And if we're still in that cycle, like you had said, is the blaming and the placating and the distracting, and you never get to that leveling, you're going to keep in that unhealthy cycle until you get to the leveling of like, oh, this is what I'm doing, and taking the self-reflection and going, I want something different. How do I get there?
Maturity. And maturity needs to happen. And if we're chunking really up, maturity is a theme in this, how to grow from not being mature into maturity.
Yeah. And it really shows how these characters, all of them, grow in their maturity when they level with themselves about what they need or what they want, and hit that next level of like, oh, I'm safe in that leveling because of the people they have around them that love them and can fill those gaps. And so that's what's really neat. So as we go through that over the next few episodes, you know, today we talked a little bit about the satir model and a little bit about the model of grief, like you brought up, which is the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross grief method. You can look her up, and we have found, actually our mentor Scott McFall has found that it is exactly the same when people are in a changing time frame. So a changing moment, when life changes, they're choosing change, whatever it is, they will go through the same process of the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross grief process. So teaching somebody to get to the other side of that with the same leveling, like in the satir model, so that they can grow into that next space in a safe and wonderful and exciting way. So, you know, we have so many different tools by so many different experts that we go over with our training with the Master Hypnotist Society. And, you know, as we go into the next few episodes, what are you looking forward to, Carmela?
I'm looking forward to unpacking it all. Like you said, you know, talking about the forgiveness model, talking about what more lessons we can learn from those characters and how we interlace them with the materials that we go over in the Master Hypnotist Society. It's very exciting because you see everything kind of unfold right in front of you. And that's what makes a great show. And, you know, we're talking about the arts and books, or, you know, even in music, you know, music and songs can layer into these type of lessons. One of my favorite songs now, when I think of, you know, things that Scott will bring up, is the Talking Heads. And, you know, there's all these wonderful messages interlaced. It's just a matter of seeing with the eyes of the lesson. And so I'm excited to keep presenting and sharing with everyone.
Yeah. So look forward to the next episode. As, like I said, we're going to go over that forgiveness arc in the show Shrinking. And that's going to be a lot of fun as we break through down each character and how they grew from their forgiveness. So look forward to that. But thank you, Carmela, for being a great outliner today and getting some great notes out there for us. And I truly appreciate doing this with you, and I look forward to the next episode. So we'll see you all soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. Stop.